one of my father's Talmidim who I met in Tasmania. And I don't know if everybody heard it already or some people didn't. Yeah, it's okay to tell it. Okay. As you may and may not be aware, I told you that the Rebbe writes about the idea of shlichus is mokim rachik begashmius beruchnis. So I was there to shlichus in Melbourne, which is mokim rachik begashmius, and then b'hashgacha pratis I got involved with shlichus in Tasmania, and that's a mokim which is very rachik beruchnis. Anyway, I've been the last year and a half since COVID. I haven't been there, only via Zoom. My son, I have a son who lives there full time. But prior to that, I used to go about 8 times a year or so, including Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Purim. Anyway, the story I'm going to tell happened a number of years ago, about 12, 13 years ago on Rosh Hashanah. And I was there in Hobart, which is the capital of Tasmania. We have pumas in different cities. And on that Rosh Hashanah, we had it in Hobart. And we blew shofar that year. Rosh Hashanah was Shabbos and Sunday. We blew shofar on Sunday. And it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was walking on a little street we had a late shofar blowing schedule for 5 o'clock for people. You have Yidden in Hobart who come to daven, and many Yidden who the idea of a 4-hour davening is way too long for them, and they're ready to come for a half-hour Rosh Hashanah service. So we have, for those people, a short and abridged version at 5 o'clock. Anyway, I'm walking towards it, and somebody comes up to me and says, Shana Tova. I tell him, Shana Tova B'chlal. I've met Hobart, you don't meet too many Yidden. Hobart, Tasmania B'chlal has about 400 Jews in an area much bigger than Eretz Yisrael. So it's very hard to find Jews there. Anyway, but Yidden over the years have found us. So he asked me, is there a shul where they're going to blow shofar? So I tell him there's a shul, but they blow shofar already, but we're having in David and Pnina Clark's house, we're going to be blowing shofar at 5 o'clock. You're welcome to join. So he tells me, yeah, he's going to come with me. He's coming with. I have some wife and children. Wife want to come. Anybody else? No, he's not coming himself. Nobody else in his group. Anyway, he tells me his name is Yoina Gilbert. I tell him my name is Yossi Gordon. So he asked me, are you perhaps a son of Rabbi Shalom Ber Gordon, who was a shliach of the Frierdiker Rebbe and a teacher in Newark, New Jersey? So I say, yes, why? He says, he was my Hebrew teacher. He was my first teacher. And then as we're walking, he tells me that his father wrote a letter to the Frierdiker Rebbe asking the Frierdiker Rebbe to send the shliach to Newark, New Jersey to teach kids. And he says, I don't know, he's the only one who wrote, not the only one I only know what he told me. He told me that the hemshech to the letter his father wrote in Sivan Tafshin Beis, and that I know is a fact, that Sivan Tafshin Beis, that ever called my father in on a Friday morning and told him he should go to Newark, New Jersey and start a yeshiva, and the limudim should be up and running on Sunday morning. The limudim should start. And he gave him car fare one way. That was the investment to make the yeshiva. About 35 cents. How much it cost to start a yeshiva? It's about the right amount. Anyway. Lepoyo. So this Yid was one of he started learning on Sunday over there, and he was arranged that he would stay. My father stayed at a house of a Yid, David Stockhammer, a very special Yid. There's letters in Igros Kodesh to him. He was a shver of Rabbi Mentlik, Rabbi Katz. Anyway, the Goldberg from Adar Torah is his name. So anyway, he actually wasn't a Lubavitcher, but he brought his children, all 3 of his daughters, to Atvotsk to get Lubavitcher Shidduchim, because he thought that this was the best chance they would remain from. So anyway, my Pinchas Katz was involved in helping my father get Talmidim, and they started Sunday morning. And he was one of this guy, Yoina Gelber, was one of the first 10 Talmidim. So he tells me, and just a Maimer HaMusker, I will mention that from my father's first 10 Talmidim, which he got on that Sunday morning, included Rabbi Kalman Marlow, who was the head of Vad Rabban in Lubavitch, and included Rabbi Nosson Sherman, who was the head of Art Scroll, and included Rabbi Cantor, who was a Av Bezdin in Muncie, as well as a Rosh HaKohen. So 3 people became, relatively well-known. But this is Maimer HaMusker. But anyway, this Yid Yoina Gilbert didn't necessarily become the most well-known, but I met him on Rosh Hashanah in Tasmania. Anyway, he tells me that over the years he's never missed hearing Shofar Rosh Hashanah. He says he himself, his son is blowing shofar at shul. He's blown many times. He never missed shofar Rosh Hashanah. He's never driven on Rosh Hashanah before. He says he doesn't know how it happened, but this is the first time that he found himself driving on Rosh Hashanah. And he pulled into Hobart at 4:00 in the afternoon on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. And he went right to the reception desk and he asked, how does he find the shul? They told him they don't know. And they sent him down to go towards Sandy Bay Road, the main road. And the reception hotel did not know where to find the shul.
Where's he from?
He lives in New Jersey, but he was touring. And he was driving on Rosh Hashanah. He claims it's the first time in his life that he ever drove on Rosh Hashanah. He says he doesn't know how it happened, that he was driving on Rosh Hashanah. Anyway, he says that he saw me, and he says in his mind, as he saw me, he saw my father. And he saw my father coming towards him. I was the first person he met. And he hears in his mind my father saying, Yoinele, Yoinele, wo hast du verkrochen? Heint is Rosh Hashanah, was tut sich mit dir? This is what he imagined my father telling him. I mean, he realized I wasn't my father. He realized based on age, my father would have been more his age. Anyway, Lepoil, he went with me to this house, and then he asked me if he could blow shofar. He said he knew how to blow. I didn't want him to blow. A, I wasn't sure he knew how to blow. I wasn't sure he would do halacha. And B, he just says himself that he was driving in a car on Rosh Hashanah and didn't want him to do the blowing. He asked me if he could be makri. I said yes. Then he asked me if he could do the brachas and min hameitzer. I told him also yes. He knew the brachas, he knew, and he said min hameitzer. I remember he knew the Chabad nigan min hameitzer because he had heard mental cats. He heard the in the Newark saying min hameitzer, and he said min hameitzer mamish. And I felt such a min hameitzer. What I found amazing about this story is this is a yid who my father taught him in Tafshin Beis, Tafshin Gimel. It was 65 years since my father taught him. He still told me over the Gemara he learned with my father. It had an effect. And yes, he didn't drive Rosh Hashanah for 65 years. And even when he drove on Rosh Hashanah, after 65 years, he still heard in his mind my father telling him, Yoinele, Yoinele, wo hast du verkrochen? What I learned from this story is the amazing effect on chinuch. Okay, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And this one was a difficult one. Unlike Rabbi Marlowe and Rabbi Nosson Sherman and Rabbi Cantor, this person didn't become from the leading Rabbanim. He ended up 65 years later driving on Rosh Hashanah. But the effect of the chinuch was still there. And I found it had a very deep message to me. Another story which I've told in 770, I've told this more than once. So I don't know who heard it and who didn't. But I don't, it's a true story. I'm not going to make up new ones. I'm going to tell you the ones that really happened. But another story that I'll tell you of the effect of something that affected my chinuch. I once took my, today Baruch Hashem, I have a number of children, but my youngest today is 22, so we don't have to do babysitting anymore. But they were once younger. Many, many years ago, on a Sunday, I took my children to the park to give my wife a few hours off. Come to the park, and I see a number of Russian Jews sitting at a table, and one says to the other, "The zest of that Eid, so the other Russian Jew says, "But did is not Mashiach? The bist al Lubavitcher?" I said, "Yes." So yes, Mr. Gebrach muss sich apart tefillin. I told him no. So this Russian Jew, and this hit me. I've attended many Chassidish Farbrengen, but this hit me more than any Farbrengen I ever heard. He tells me, "Du bist a falscher, you're a fucker. But dir auf in Stub ist da a plakat wegen Mashiach, und du bist gekommen im Park on film." He was sitting there without a yarmulke, and he told me, good and proper. What am I going to say? I have nothing to say. I looked around the park. I found Yidden with a Rambam, with Sicho and a Maimer, the big Lubavitch community in Melbourne. But nobody had tefillin with them. Packed up my kids, went home, broke out my tefillin, came back, 5 of them put on tefillin. One guy got a mezuzah, good, we're all good and fine. But I still found, and Rabbi Blooming asked that I tell stories of the effect of chinuch. I will tell you an effect of a case where some chinuch that I did, which had an effect beyond expectation. I was 3 summers on shlichus in Panama City. Okay, in Panama City, there was a big shopping street, Avenida Central, and I would go from store to store, putting on film with people. Good, very good. I was there 4 weeks, and I got about 15 daily people putting on film. Very good. There was one of the stores, my regular was called Toby's, and there was an Israeli there, Moshe Cohen, and he would put on tefillin every day. One time I come there, and his son, a 14-year-old son of his, Ezra, is there. And I asked him to put on tefillin, and he tells me, Ani maniach tefillin kohen. I knew who his father was, knowing who his mother was, I couldn't imagine how in the world this guy puts on tefillin every day. So I asked him, who taught you to put on, who told you about tefillin every day? So he tells me, you did. I said, I did. I never remember meeting this guy. He tells me, yes, you did. In Panama, there was a school that was called Alberto Einstein Institute. It had 800 kids, 600 Yidden, and 200 Goyim. That's what it was. And we went to speak in the school, and I was very awkward because I was speaking in classes which were 25% Goyim, some more, some less. But anyway, this kid tells me, you came to my class and you spoke. And when you were in my class, you told us that just like the guf needs food, the neshama needs food. And you told us that the food for the neshama is tefillin. I didn't remember that I said that, but he says I said that. It's nicht gefragt. I could have said something. Nicht gefragt. Anyway, he says, since I heard that you said that the food of the neshama is tefillin, I put on tefillin. I heard this a year ago. I put on tefillin every day since then. And I thought, I went to a school to 600 kids, and I thought I was talking to the wall. I thought it was one big bracha. And it turned out that from something that I said in one of the classes, a kid ends up putting on tefillin every day for a year. Now, why am I mentioning this? That I learned from this that you don't know, you have to try. You don't know what's going to come, when it will work, when it won't work. Just one more chinuch story. I have, Baruch Hashem, a number of children. I just did, that's why I'm here. Two kids just got married. But I have, besides my children, I also have kids, there's a child, my name is Akiva Finkin, who's in my house every Shabbos. He's a semi-adopted child. Yes. He has a mother, Baruch Hashem, but for all purposes, I look after him. Even now when I'm here, I'm trying to call him or message him every day. This boy is from a Russian family, and he, at some point, basically, he wanted to go to a Jewish school. He applied there's a Yavna school, which is a Mizrahi school, and when he applied there, they didn't accept him because they started asking him, didn't know Rosh Hashanah, didn't know Yom Kippur, didn't know anything. And they told him he should first go and learn about basic Yiddishkeit. And then in a year or so, he'd come back after you've gotten the basic course about Judaism, you come. Then he came to Chabad to apply, and Chabad accepted him despite his lack of knowledge of Yesodus. Didn't know Aleph Beis, didn't know anything. Anyway, they took him in. He's in yeshiva now 3.5 years. He's just actually maybe finishing 4 years now. And he's now moved through the classes. He's in top shiurim in Nigla, in Chassidus, in Gemara, in Chassidus, in Girsa, in Iyun. He's in the shir. We have shiurim that do 2.5 blocks in Girsa a week, memorizing many prophets of Tanya and everything. And his mother tried to master Aleph Beis. She got to Aleph Beis, she got to Gimel, and they couldn't go any further. It was beyond her capability to learn. Aleph Beis she memorized, but not Gimel. And no, I'm just mentioning this, that you don't know. You can never underestimate anybody, how far they're going to go. I actually saw an amazing, a letter that I wanted to read if I can. I just didn't have. This is in Chelek Chof Beis, and it's on page 358. He says over here, L'pa'omim hachi rabois kosher l'shayer asidom shel talmidim b'yecholtam. Many times it is impossible to assess the future of talmidim and their abilities. she'efsher, be'efsher, it's very possible. Shafilu elu hanirim lipshutim, even those who appear to be very simple, b'ashkafari shayna, efsher she is ganle b'hem kishroinei seikayach asmada ushkida kazeh. It is very possible that suddenly there'll be this ganle, amazing talents, amazing asmada, sheyatzlichu b'limudam yoiser mi bali kishrin sam. It is possible this kid who you think is a total write-off, he may have the most amazing hatzlacha. V'dafke heim yiu tiferes beis hasefer. Dafke, they will be the head of the beis hasefer. V'hamechanchim moirim u'moirim and their mechanchim. In other words, they may be. It could be that this kid who superficially looks like a write-off is maybe, talking about stories of chinuch, an amazing story. My shver is Yitzchak Kislev. Probably a number of people know the Kislev family. My shver is not from a frum family. His Seder was from, but he was, the Frierdiker Rebbe came to Chicago in Tufshin Bays, and the Frierdiker Rebbe asked that he wanted all the Hebrew school kids, all the kids from the Talmud Torah, to come and see the Frierdiker Rebbe. So all the kids from the Talmud Torah came to see the Frierdiker Rebbe. My shver was in a Talmud Torah, and he came to see the Frierdiker Rebbe when the Frierdiker Rebbe came. It was Shvat Tafshin Beis, and the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke to the Talmud Torah kids. How much do we expect will come from the Frierdiker Rebbe's talk to some 10-year-old kids? Anyway, I don't know what happened to the others, but I know that on my shver, seeing the Rebbe had an amazing effect. And he decided from the day he met the Rebbe, he became, at 10 years old, he met the Rebbe, and he became Shomer Torah Mitzvahs, despite his parents from that day on. And he took on to learn. They had a Lubavitch Yeshiva in Chicago, and he would come every day for 2 years. And then when that didn't continue, he went to Skokie and he wanted to learn there. And didn't let him, and he said that he didn't pay money. His parents weren't ready to pay money. So he begged them and begged them. Finally, he failed and he learned a few hours a day, every day until he was 26. He actually got smicha. And he raised a family, and that's L'Shem L'Tiferes. And he has, Baruch Hashem, 8 children shluchim and 30 grandchildren shluchim. And it's all from a kid who just heard and the Chol Yisrael in Chicago he started, and hookups were in his house. And he also ran, there was a girls' school, which he was took financial management of it, and a budget of, without taking a cent from it, he had a budget of over $300,000 a year to look after for a school which he ran the finance of. And he wasn't the Talmud Chacham to be able to do the chinuch. Mrs. Turin did the chinuch, but still, he had the responsibility of the budget, and he looked after it without taking a cent from it. My shviger ran free, and she actually ran Sedarim for 500 people on average of a year. Actually, when the Rebbe sent telegrams to Chicago and sent letters and telegrams to the shluchim, he would also put Mrs. Kosovsky, which my shviger, again, wasn't necessarily, actually, even though I will mention that even though she wasn't from a frum family, her mother wanted her to have a knowledge of Yiddishkeit. And there was a Jewish school in Chicago. She wanted her to go to a Jewish school. They weren't in Shem Shabbos. She wanted her to go to a Jewish school to know they're Jewish. And the Jewish school didn't have an age in a class her age. So her mother said, you have to go to school even though the kids are 2 years younger. Her mother insisted that she wants her to go to shul. She wants her to go to a Jewish school. A little bit of Yiddishkeit. And she later eventually ran free in Chicago, and she made brisin of thousands of Russians. Actually, she once got a very strong letter from the Rebbe, that the Rebbe wrote to her that he heard that there's big backlogs of brisin in Chicago. Russian Jews are waiting for weeks and weeks to get a bris, and you can't wait a day for a bris. So she started making 20 brisin a day. She started arranging 20 brisin a day until the backlog, until they caught up that there should be no backlog, because the Rebbe was very upset about the fact that people are waiting weeks to have a bris. But what am I mentioning? This all came. But I'm mentioning all this is because Rabbi Blooming wants me to tell you about chinuch. The Frierdiker Rebbe said he wanted to see the Talmud Torah. The Frierdiker Rebbe, who was hardly able to speak, spoke for some Torah kids. How much do you expect will come? And you never can underestimate how much something will achieve. You don't know